Goodness to you. And this is Sporty King coming at you on Friday. And I say goodness because I don't know whether it's morning, afternoon, or evening that you're enjoying this broadcast. But isn't it great to have good in front of your salutation? Welcome to Gift Friday. Gift Friday is something I created because so often we hear the term TGIF, thank God it's Friday. But I say, what allure does Friday have to that person who took their last breath on Thursday, or any day before that for that matter? So I've learned to use through what I've learned through Psalm 92 and 2, and that is, it is good to proclaim your unfailing love in the morning, your faithfulness in the evening. Thus, I think that instead of using TGIF, I use TGIT. Not thank God it's Thursday, but thank God it's today. And then thank God it's tonight. And thus I add the lesson I learned from Matthew 6 and 34, which says, "It is so don't worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will bring its own worries. Thank God it's tonight. Instead, today's trouble is enough for today. Thank God it's today." And I offer instead, another way to use TGIF, and that is trusting God is free. Trusting God is free. Think about it. What does it cost to be blessed with the greatest gift of the day? Waking up doesn't cost you a dime. And that still moves us into realizing that when we move the T and TGIF to the end, we find what we must really give God thanks for, and that is today. Thus, Gift Friday, G-I-F-T, God is for today. Gift Friday. With this broadcast, I'm going to share one of my original poetic messages and tell you how you can use it to help start a conversation that could change someone's life for the better, including yours. Each poem will then be my gift to you. Now, if you like a free keepsake colorful copy of the poem and you're watching on Facebook or LinkedIn, I'd ask you to send me an email to sporty@sportyking.com so I can send you a copy. The reason I asked you to send an email instead of dropping it in the thread is that way I'll be responding to your email, and that would get through your firewall or security so they don't think it's spam. If you're watching on YouTube or my website, then you can just drop your request in the thread and I'll be able to email that to you. Meanwhile, even in the midst of Black History Month's acknowledgement, I've noticed how many people respond in everyday life to messages about grief, suicide, and mental illness. So I chose to take just a sidestep from Black History Month to include Black History Month and help that message by making the point that the triggers in our lives are not always associated with illness or regret. Thus, my gift for this broadcast will be about choosing our messengers. And I'll share my original poem about one of my biggest triggers in choosing a messenger, and that is their tone of voice. The tone of voice respecting who I am. It's my personal pet peeve, yet I don't like or respond well to people raising their voice at me. It makes me feel like a child, and it reminds me of the only two people I have ever felt I had to mentally get over it after they raised their voice, and that was Leah and Ricky, my mother and father, who are both gone. Now, I'm not talking about commands or directions in situations where it's necessary, and I'm also not talking about how you should feel. I'm talking about me. And as you know, one of my mantras is control your vocabulary. Don't let your vocabulary control you. And so I feel when someone's shouting or loses their temper, it's letting their vocabulary control them. And that's just not something that sits well with me. But it is the context of sentences and situations that give individual meaning to the reactions in words. Now, when we hear the term shout out, we tend to think about When we hear the term shout out, we tend to think about someone acknowledging our presence. What I'm going to do is twist it here to talk about one of my anger triggers that I just mentioned, that I don't like anybody raising their voice at me. This is a poem that I wrote actually back in 2002. And today's gift is from a book I wrote called A Poet in Every Prophet. If you see the creativity there, I believe that all poetry is prophecy. And so I use all lowercase letter, but in the word prophet, you see the word poet. So if you're a poet, I believe that you are a prophet. And this poem is called Don't Give Me a Shout Out. First, there were the shouts of the raiders, aimed at scaring me stiff to reduce the struggle of the hurt and capture. There were let me go back one tick and just say, as you listen to this poem, I think you will see it, but I want to say it at the beginning. I want you to imagine the slave trade. Because as we're talking about Black History Month, even though we have to acknowledge that Black history did not start with slavery, it is a part. And so that's the part that I've chosen to tackle with my message, Don't Send Me a Shout Out. First, there were shouts of the raiders, aimed at scaring me stiff to reduce the struggle of the hunt and capture. There were shouts of the captives, echoless, unheard, even unseen all around me, as I grew numb to the understanding of the hatred that was once hunting. Isn't it natural for prey to resist? Or must the hunter meditate and concoct nightmares that become fantasies of wanting to possess a power he was not gifted with? Focused on holding on to those fantasies, perhaps the hunter defies the reality that the catch has no corresponding urge to be caught. And the darkness of the hunter's nightmare transfers to the hull of a ship as the initial restless place of the live game, and silently begs that his conscience would find peace and justify his lustful addiction for human bondage. And like me, the hunter just wanted to be understood. Yet the shouts got louder and became more unbearable as they took on the tones of moaning, pain, suffering, defiance, surrender. And surrender was the most deafening because it mocked the others as wasteful. You see, surrender shouted at me for believing that I should be free. And then I recalled it like the first shout. There were shouts that could have been welcomes, shouts that should have been thanks, shouts that should have shown understanding, shouts that could have guided, shouts that might have instructed, shouts that may have educated. Yet all the shouts seemed to want was surrender. And I remembered them like the first one. It shouted at me for believing that I should be free. So I don't hear shouts anymore. Instead, I feel them. I feel them as my back stiffens and braces, as my teeth clench and my eyes refuse to close, as my knuckles turn an unseen white with anger that guarantee to one day singe a hole through the necessary flesh, threatening to inhibit my peaceful walk with God in my custom-made heaven, where my every freedom is not challenged. No, I don't hear shouts anymore. I see them. I see them with every door that slammed and echoed its denial of my right to light, housing, or employment. I see them as assassins' bullets, hoodwinked, bamboozled, and aimed at erasing my newfound freedom and wisdom. And no, that's not sweat you see on my brow, but the reminder of how the quest to hose down my existence turned more than a cheek. It turned this mother out, and I can't hear you when you shout. Because I smell oceans, crosses burning, tear gas and traitors of all colors, and I taste defeat. I taste blood, bile, and mucus. The dirt kicked up from the person 3 bodies ahead of me. Salt water, scraps, rations, even the freedom that raindrops brought, and that choice to embrace the sun's kiss. I feel, I see, I smell, I taste. I even understand why they want to keep me out. Yet I can't hear you when you shout. I use that message and the title, I use that poem with the title of a message that I did with a youth group during a church, to speak at a church during their youth day, where I was talking to parents about disciplining their children. And I made the title, Don't Always Yell. D-A-Y. It was Youth Day. Don't always yell. You see, God does not speak to us in one tone. And this is where I'm talking about my anger trigger. God does not speak to us in one tone. His strongest message comes when we are at peace, meditation, sleep, daydreaming. Yet we have to be in tune to get his direction. And so as I said to that group, what I learned through First Kings 19, 11 through 12. But the Lord was not in the wind, not in the earthquake, not in the fire. And after the fire, there was the sound of a gentle whisper. When Elijah heard it, he went out and stood at the entrance of the cave. Don't give me a shout out. Enjoy your gift and think about how you can share it. Remember, if you'd like a copy and you're on Facebook or LinkedIn, email me at sporty@sportyking.com. If you're on my website or YouTube, you can just drop your request in the thread. Whatever you do, always remember that God is for today. Thank you, God bless you, and have a safe weekend. Ciao.